Coates is a studio owner from Maitland, New South Wales, and she has a lot to share when it comes to how to grow an engaged community and a successful studio biz. She's one of my coaching clients and a graduate of my course Talent Manager Bootcamp. And she's gone from running a studio herself and being a teacher for many years at Upstage Youth Theatre to now having a talent agency which is thriving. She's not a huge studio, but she's got a good solid number, over 100 students. And within that, she's been able to secure almost 60 auditions for her artists this year alone and booked her students for work. It's phenomenal. And this is all from a regional town. She's going to talk about her story from how she got started in the industry, her teaching career through to running her studio, her great communication and engagement with her students, to how she's implemented a talent agency in-house and what that's done for her business as well. So she's going to share the whole picture for you guys. I absolutely love having Anne as a client, and she's just one of those beautiful people that I hope you truly resonate with, very down to earth and such a wonderful conversation. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off the show with Anne Coates. Hello and welcome to Studio Biz and All That Jazz. I'm your performing arts business coach and host, Josephine Lancuba. This show is designed to bring you inspiration, information, and the instruments you need to create and grow the studio biz of your dreams. I will bring you a mix of solo episodes as well as interviews where I tap into the minds of industry experts. My career started as a performer over 2 decades ago. I later became a speaker, theatrical producer, and talent manager, as well as having a successful teaching career in singing, drama, and dance. 10 years into my professional journey, I became a mama of 2, and with a baby on my hip, opened up my very own performing arts studio. From hardship and humble beginnings to 4 studio locations and a multi-6-figure performing arts biz, I know how to attract students and keep them coming back for more. And in the show, I will share with you my experiences to help you thrive and fast track your path to success. I know you have a spark inside of you with dreams and goals for the future. As your coach and mentor, I'm here to help you step into your limelight and be a cheerleader in your ear each and every week. So get ready to be entertained and inspired as we talk studio biz and all that jazz. Before we leap into today's show, I just wanted to let you know that I am running a free masterclass online called How to Create a Talent Management Service Within Your Studio. I would love you to hang out with me. You will learn how to find auditions and work for your students in film, TV, commercial, and on stage. I'll also teach you the 3 key benefits of running an in-house talent management service and the 7 key revenue streams available to you as a talent manager. I'll also show you what role a talent manager plays and how to apply that within your studio biz. There are 2 dates and times available. It's also being recorded for playback, but of course, I want to hang out with you live. You get the most value from any online, masterclass or event when you're there. But of course, that resource will be available for those who register. So register today. Don't miss out so that you can create your own talent management service within your studio. Head to josephinelancuba.com/masterclass. Link is in the show notes. Welcome to the show, the wonderful Anne Coates from Upstage Youth Theatre. Thank you so much for being back on the show.
Pleasure. Lovely to see your face again.
Here, gosh, I think it was definitely over a year ago, I think. And we were talking about something very different because you were in such a different stage of your business then, and it was also very fresh off the back of COVID. So there was a lot going on back then, and we were talking about outdoor events and experiences.
Yeah.
But today, I just want to tap back in because it has been such a while, and you are one of my beautiful clients. You've done my course Talent Manager Bootcamp and also are a member of Studio Biz Success. But I just want to talk about the journey up until now because it has really evolved over the last couple of years. But for everyone listening at home, what do you do? Where do you come from, Anne? Who are you?
I live in a little suburb of Maitland in the Hunter Valley.
Yeah.
And Maitland's not a little suburb. I think it's one of the fastest growing cities actually in New South Wales. And just started teaching drama in a hall next door to my house, a sleepy little hall with about literally a handful of children about 21 years ago. So this is our 21st year this year, and it's grown always organically. It's always been word of mouth until I met you, and you introduced me a whole lot of possibilities of maybe, you know, coming on board with a little bit more social media and marketing. And yeah, it's been really interesting to see the way that has grown. But my background is teaching. I started out as a drama English teacher in secondary school way back in the 90s. And when I went on maternity leave, that's when I started teaching the classes in the hall next door, because I started color coding the pegs on the clothesline. And I thought, no, I don't know if maternity leave's for me. I think I need something else.
And that was 21 years ago. Wow.
Yes, I have a 21-year-old as my eldest, and the business is 21 years old, and that's when I started. Yeah.
Yeah. And since then, obviously, it's changed. I mean, you started in that venue next to your home with a handful of students. When did it start going from a hobby business to, hey, this is a studio business that I really want to develop and grow?
Probably once, and I don't want to make it sound like I measure everything by the age of my children, but once I had my second child, which was 3 years later, and then by the time he was about 2 or 3, that was when I made a decision I was working part-time at a performing arts high school. Well, actually, I was permanent there, but I was on part-time maternity leave there and teaching the drama in the afternoons. And I felt like I wasn't giving either of it my full attention. And particularly because it was a performing arts high school, you know, there were kids who were traveling quite a distance to come to that school. And I had previously, you know, I would stay back till 6, 7 p.m. at night later when we were doing productions, but, you know, I was running ensembles and things. And I thought, it was crazy that there was probably somebody else out there who could commit those hours to the school, and then I could commit those hours to my drama school, but also make that work more around my family and be flexible with that. So when the school was next door to us, or the drama school, you know, my husband used to pass Sibylla, my eldest, over the fence. I'd give her a quick feed and pass her back.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it was actually really lovely. And the community here are very supportive. So they, you know, they loved sending their kids along. And then when I started adult classes, all the mums and the dads came, and everyone wanted to be a part of something different that was happening. So I think that gave me a sense of community that I would have missed if I had given up. And that was a big thing, giving up a permanent position in a school in the Hunter, in a really good school. But I had a beautiful, dear friend who was a lighting designer, and he, you know, I was sort of weighing up the pros and cons, and I said to him, what do I do? And he said, you know, if you don't jump, then it can't catch you. And so I jumped, and here I am.
Yeah. And how do you feel about taking that jump? Like, what was that jump like at the time when you said, I'm going to dive into this business full time?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate because I have a partner. My husband's in really steady work, so he's a teacher as well. So, you know, you can't get much more stable than that. And he has always been willing to support me with what I've been wanting to do with the business. So that gave me a lot of security. And also, he's a very creative person as well. So what was fantastic was that, you know, during school holidays when we'd be doing shows and things, he was able to help me out with those. It was scary, but it felt like a natural progression. It probably didn't really get really scary until COVID, when we, you know, when it came down to, well, if this business drops away, how are we going to pay the mortgage? How are we going to do this?
Yeah, and that's a reality for so many studio owners. And I think that was a big moment for not just studio owners, businesses, you know, overall during that COVID period. I think that a lot of people are still in that recovery mode, regardless if the market has come back and you've got all your students back. There was a lull.
Yes.
I mean, I've got friends that are still paying back debts to their landlords for studio
Yeah.
hire and rents and things
Yeah.
like that they just couldn't recover. So,
Crazy.
it was a big moment, and it's actually the moment I can't think if it was 2021 potentially that we engaged with each other. It was
Yeah,
around there,
maybe.
something like that.
Yeah,
But it
I
was
think it
during
was
that
about 21.
muffly
Yeah.
time, right?
Mm.
Post-COVID, when we connected, and that was through Talent Manager Bootcamp, which is, a course that I provide, as you know, so that helps studio owners become talent managers and represent their students. Now, you jumped into that, and I thought that was fantastic. I think you might have jumped in on my first very launch of it, actually.
I was in the first group. Yep.
Yeah, amazing.
Mm.
And now you run your own in-house talent management service, I must add, and we're going to talk about that and what you've achieved, because it's come leaps and bounds from when you first started. What was it that made you think, I'm interested in providing professional performance opportunities for my students? Like, what was the thing that, was the tipping point where you're like, you know what, this might be a good next step?
I had a lot of students who would ask me, particularly in our area up here, because we are, good 2 hours from Sydney, and they would ask about representation and if I could recommend anyone. And I really couldn't, because I really didn't know anyone that I would completely trust with them at that point. And I had an idea of how that sort of part of the industry worked, and I'd had a little bit of experience with it, but probably not enough to be sort of handing out advice and feeling comfortable with it. And so when the opportunity came up and you spoke about it as a a possibility, that really excited me. And I think one of my particular talents is I'm actually in another life, I probably would have loved to have been a casting agent. I'm really good at seeing the potential in my students. I mean, we all are, of course, but and also because we don't have a huge pool to draw from, we don't have a huge numbers in our studio. So when I do shows, I can't just choose a show and then have auditions. I kind of have to choose the show that's going to suit the cohort of students that I have at the time and really highlight their particular talents and quirks. And so I think that having that skill is something that's made it a lot easier for me to step into that world too, of knowing which one of my talent are going to fit particular briefs that come through.
And what was it like when you first started? Because it was a slow beginning when you introduced it. Talk through that, because I think sometimes people expect, for Rome to be built in a day, essentially.
Yeah.
But it's not like that. It can be a little bit of a slow burn. People have to know and trust you in a different way, right? They trust you as the teacher, as the business owner, as the leader of what you do. But when it comes to representation, it's actually building another arm to your business, and a great arm, but it's still new. So it took a little while for the take up, didn't it? But then obviously we'll get to the now later, but let's start from there. Like, what was it like when you first said, hey, we're going to do this?
Well, my first talent that were on my talent roster were my 3 children.
Yeah, that's very common with my clients, by the way. I just want you to know, most of them start with their own kids. It's really interesting. Yeah.
And they get requests, audition requests, and they're like, oh, really? Do I have? Yes, you do. Yes, make some money. No, I started with them because I thought that would be a really great way for me then to get my head around, not only as the manager, but also as the parent, how that works. Because there's no use saying to parents, oh, it's really, sorry, it's my sausage dog in the background. He'll bark at anything. So it's very easy for me to say to, Mrs. Jones, oh, look, it's easy. You just film it at home, film that self-tape, send it in, blah, blah, blah. But, Mrs. Jones is an anaesthetist. She's not, this is a completely different world for her. So for me to actually experience that myself as a parent and then be able to explain it to those parents and how easy it actually is, that was really helpful. So starting small with my own children, and then really it was just about creating a vibe, in the studio. And you mentioned that in the boot camp, you were saying, it gives a whole different kind of energy to the studio, saying that we're doing something different and something exciting. And because we are in a regional area, even though, Maitland is a big city, I think a lot of the kids that come to our studio are really excited about that possibility, that it sounded quite, cosmopolitan for them to be able to send in the self-tapes and then, travel down to Sydney if they have a callback request. And so far, it's been wonderful. Each one of them there's been quite a few who've gone back down for callbacks. And that's why I'm really fortunate where we live as well. The students and the parents and the talent are grateful for the opportunity to drive down to Sydney 2 hours, do a 15-minute callback and drive back. And they're okay.
And it hasn't just been callbacks. Your students have been booking gigs.
We have been booking gigs, 100% yes. We've been booking gigs. But I guess what I want to say is they're really hungry for the experience. So even just the experience of going for that callback. I've got one guy who's a parent who, and you probably know his face, Joe, because I think I've sent it through to you before, and he gets requests every other day because he's got this great face. He's in his late 50s and he's got this really great, unique look. I think
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And he sort of, is doing this as a bit of as an interest and a side hustle. He's a really interesting person who wants to try new things and he loves it. I ran into him down in the local shopping area at the coffee shop, and he was dressed as a fisherman. And I said, "Where are you going today?" "Oh, I'm going down to the callback for the, such and such TVC." And he was just having his coffee with a fishing rod and his hat on in the main street, waiting to go down. And it's really lovely. And everybody, all the coffee shop owners, they all know that he's doing that, and they all ask me, has he got another request yet? It's really.
I love that you've shined a light on that, because it isn't just about the gig, is it?
No.
It's about the opportunity. It's about being in the arena.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is something quite special. And knowing that your students can be in the arena and be up against, like you said, big studio talent or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not about where you're from. It's often not the person that's front and center in your dance routine or got the lead role in your show. And that's the other interesting part. A lot of my clients, when they first come in, they think they know who's going to book. They have no idea. It's usually someone that in your studio may not necessarily be that person that's front and center or the trophy winner.
Yep.
You can't actually predict it. It's whatever the casting director's looking for. It could be a really diverse role. It could be someone that is awkward, that they want for the role, or someone that necessarily isn't that front and center personality. So it just depends. I also love that you used an example of Mrs. Jones being the one word that I can't pronounce properly. I can't say it. I'm like, literally. She said the one thing I can never pronounce.
No, we literally do have a couple of anaesthetists whose kids come to the classes. So yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So now, okay, so you started small. So the buzz started happening. It didn't happen overnight. They began to come in. You held that first photo shoot, then the second, and from your feedback, those photo shoots were quite successful.
Yeah.
Then to now. So how long did you start? When did you start your in-house talent agency?
So I did the course with you, and then I think I opened it in the August of that year. So I can't remember exactly when we did the boot camp. It took a little bit of time because I wanted to make sure there was no point starting it, excuse me, until I was able to set up the in-house photo shoot. I felt, because otherwise I would have had a whole bunch of random photos up there in my talent roster, and I probably wouldn't have felt entirely comfortable sending those in or submitting them.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we went over in the course. It's one of the first things you kick off with, having that in-house talent shoot. It's actually a great little revenue generator too, because it's quite a lucrative way to get in a couple of $1,000s in the hand and to kickstart the agency.
And so good for the young photographer that I use as well, because he's sort of starting out as well. And that was really important to me, to find the right photographer who the kids would feel comfortable with and the parents would feel comfortable with, obviously, but also could work with me so that they didn't have their idea going in there and want to do it entirely their way. So we actually have a really great system, and now that we've done it sort of four or five times now, we are able to, there's a rhythm that we get into. And it really works well, and he's just a delight. You know, he makes all the kids feel really comfortable, which is fantastic. So even that in itself is a learning experience for them, to be in front of a camera and to enjoy someone taking their photo, and to be able to put something special on, an outfit that makes them feel good. And even the adults, I've got an adult who comes to my adult classes, and she's signed up for the Studio Talent Collective, and she's a GP, and she felt so uncomfortable, you know, sitting in front of that camera, and it was actually quite tricky to get her to relax and to get the best out of her in that. But she was saying to me that was fantastic for her, you know, just to have that experience. Yeah.
Let's talk about that with the kids. So obviously there are some kids who join your in-house talent agency, and this happens even in the classroom environment, right? You've got kids who are confident, kids who are not. How do you think that impacts their confidence, and how have you been managing that and building it through these processes, like a photo shoot or an audition or a self-tape?
Yep.
Like, talk me through that with kids that might be struggling.
Yeah. So you're talking about auditions just within that framework?
Yeah,
of
any sort of agency sort of experience with someone that's a little bit reserved potentially.
Yeah. I probably, so as far as the photo shoots go, parents can come in with them. Sometimes I'll have, you know, they'll have the whole family there just so that they feel a bit more comfortable. I find that I just talk to them and ask them questions and just tell them to pretend that I'm in the lens of the camera. But even if they're looking at me, Floyd, our photographer, he just somehow manages to capture them when they're feeling comfortable and when they're talking to me. He probably captures a whole bunch of others that when they're not looking as comfortable, but he's very good at picking the right photos and sending them through. Excuse me. And so, yeah, I think having family there, or a parent there, or someone that makes them feel super comfortable, making sure there's enough time for them to relax, but not so much time that they're getting in their head about it and sitting and waiting. So I make sure none of them wait. They come in and they're straight in front of the camera.
Are you holding support workshops and like private classes or anything for audition technique or extra things that you've been able to introduce to your studio as revenue generators?
I have had audition workshops before. I've got to start sort of figuring out how to tailor those a little bit more, because I've got a lot of students who want to do auditions for the local performing arts high school and primary school, and that's obviously a very different type of audition to going in and having a callback or a self-tape request. So that's my next step, is actually to whether to put both of those together in one package or whether to do them separately. Yeah,
that's actually a really good idea, you know, packaging it, because I've run audition technique workshops, and it could even be like a half-day school holiday workshop, or even a full-day boot camp, for example. I mean, obviously I've run shorter ones where it's very specific for like 90 minutes or 2 hours, where it's just how to film a great self-tape, for example.
Yeah.
But then you can actually capture different types of audition processes in a full day boot camp, for example. So you might, I love that school example. Be like, if you're auditioning for the school, you know, for your local high school, performing arts school, let's go through that in part 1 of this workshop series. Okay, part 2, we're going to talk about screen and acting to camera and self-taping. And part 3, we're gonna do a mock audition for musical theatre. You know, like, I think that you can absolutely package it, and that's actually really high value. Even to the parents. So I'm going on a tangent because I love that you talked about access to the performing arts high school, even to parents, because you can sell that. Because it's not just about getting a gig as a professional performer. Now we're talking about their education and access to the school they want to attend. So packaging that as a whole picture, I love that. That's such a good idea.
Well, I think there's a need too, because as I said, you know, there's parents out there who wouldn't know, and particularly, and I don't want to make it sound like this isn't a sort of a cultural area. It is, But there are a lot of parents here, you know, sport is the currency. So, you know, I know nothing about rugby. I would have to go to them to get some tips on rugby. And similarly, you know, there's something that I can provide that they need. So, you know, they've got a talented, creative child who wants to go to the performing arts school, but they have no idea how to help them achieve that.
Yeah, totally. You're preaching to the choir on that one, because I live in a particular area of Sydney. I used to live in a really great, diverse, multicultural, you know, all performing arts hub space.
Yep.
And then moved to suburbia, which I love, but God, is it sports nation?
It is. It is.
And I have become the manager of my son's soccer team.
Oh, I love it.
And like, I don't even know what offside is.
I know. Well, I kept getting in trouble.
I'm not the coach, I'm the manager. It is different. It's more administrative, which probably suits me better in that sense. But yeah, I get it. And it's such a thing, isn't it? Like, because at the end of the day, in studios, in agencies, we have two clients when you serve youth. The student themselves, or the artist, the youth artist, and their parents. And we have to educate their parents along with the student or artist. You know, it actually is quite a challenging thing. And that can be the thing as well when it comes to youth, like representing youth artists rather, because sometimes the artist might be really keen, but the parent's not on board.
Yeah.
If the parent's not on board and not willing to help them self-tape, it's not going to work.
That's right.
But also vice versa. The parents sometimes can be really keen and like, oh my God, this is amazing. And if the kid just doesn't want to engage, you can't force it, you know?
That's right. Yeah.
The amount of times I'm trying to make my son do a self-tape, I'll tell you. And I've had to like bribe him. It's terrible. But you know, what do? My daughter was a bit more on board, but you can't force it. And like I said, it goes both ways. So, you know, so tell me, you know, now that you've kind of built this, I think you started with 3, right? And now you've got over 60 artists that you represent, something like that. How are you managing that? Because this is a question I often get asked. When people join Talent Managed Bootcamp, they go on to become talent agents or in-house talent management services in their studio. How do you time manage that? Like, because I'd say, honestly, it can be a side gig to your studio business. It doesn't have to be a full-time job at all. Like, it depends, right? It always comes down to whether you're reactive to briefs, and of course I share that in the course, and where to go and how to get those briefs in your inbox daily to be reactive, versus a fully fledged talent agency that is out there pitching and looking and searching, and it's their full-time gig and they represent 1,000 talent. Like, that's not what this is.
No.
This is very much a boutique agency experience. How much time do you spend on it, and what would you say to that?
I would say it's probably a little bit more time consuming than I first thought, mainly because the briefs come through every day, and often the briefs will come at a time, you know, suddenly there'll be a flurry at the end of the week, because obviously, you know, they're getting their work coming through, or there's a particular client that they're trying to work with who's decided that they want to see more of something else or whatever. So I just find that I carve out a certain amount of time every day. Excuse me.
We're talking weekdays here, because
it's not a weekend.
Nothing happens on weekends.
No. So I usually have a look, probably first up in the morning when I check my emails. That's when they'll be there. So there might be some more that'll come through later that day. And if it's an urgent request, then I'll submit something for that. But otherwise, I can leave it till the next morning, and then so it's probably, depending on how many of the briefs suit who I've got. It can be anything up from to half an hour to an hour, sometimes an hour and a half if someone actually then gets the request, and then you're sort of toing and froing a little bit with them to make sure that they're available, and to make sure they understand the brief. And that was something else I was going to say to you when you said about you said, how do I make them feel comfortable? And that's the other thing. So there's been a few whose parents really couldn't get their head around it. So I've just said if they wanted to come into the studio, we could film it in there. And then I've filmed it with the parent there so they can watch and learn how to do it with the child. So obviously that wouldn't happen all the time, and I wouldn't do that over and over again with that same child. But once they've seen it and they've seen the way I do it, then I know that they'll be okay with that.
But that can be a chargeable service, Anne.
It can be a chargeable service.
And I'm giving you the nod now, like
I
you
know.
can actually say, would you like to book me for a private lesson where I can actually film that self-tape for you?
Yeah.
And also give you the tips and tricks, and you sit in on it, and I'll show you exactly how to do it for next time.
Yeah.
So just remember that. That's a chargeable service.
Yeah.
But there's above and beyond. And then there's things that actually, like if you're sitting there with someone for 30 minutes to an hour.
Look, no. And when I say that I'll do that, it'll be after a class or something, you know, I just say, pop in after the class. We'll smash this out, and I'll quickly show you how to upload it, and then we're done. So, yeah.
And likewise, though, there are days where it's literally 5 to 10 minutes on the email, right? Because there's nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
So
there might be only after Melbourne talent or Queensland talent, or only after 45-year-old men with tattoos or whatever, you know. So you get quite adept at looking through and go, okay, no, okay, that's one for us. Yeah.
So it really only is a job once something comes in that's suitable. And again, like you said, it can take like 30 minutes or whatever. I even say it depends how big your books are too. Like I've got clients that represent, 10, 20 people, and others that represent 100 or 200. Like it just depends. So, and it also depends how much time you want to invest in it. Like I said, if you're reactive, you do get quicker at looking at briefs, don't you? You go zoom, 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 zoom. Yep. No, delete, flick, done. And obviously in the course, we provide you with the tools and the programs where you can flick them, and it can be a really easy, streamlined process. So now you have this agency. What are some of the jobs? And you can say, because I think they're all released now, what are some of the jobs that your talent secured? You've had, was it Optus commercial?
Telstra commercial. Telstra commercial. We had a government liquor and gaming. That was the first one we got, which was really interesting because there was about, I think we had about 10 or 15 extras in that. We've had Telstra, we've had NRMA and Toyota.
You've had quite a few commercials and that campaign. You've had some callbacks for lots of campaigns, but also some film and television, but not yet bookings on that side of things just yet, but I'm hoping
no,
soon.
Mainly TVCs and HCF was the last one.
Yeah. So now that you're there and you've got lots of auditions coming through, like as in they come through every week. You've got auditions literally every week for your students.
Yep.
You've got bookings coming through. You've got callbacks. By the way, everyone listening in Australia, callbacks are actually paid. So if you get a callback audition, so that means you've done an audition via a self-tape, you sent in a video audition, and then the casting director says, hey, I like you. I would like to see more of you. And so they ask for a second audition, which is a recall or a callback audition. The artist actually gets paid for that. And you, as the representative, also get a commission. So even though it's a small amount, it's nice, isn't it, to be able to give someone like $80 or something like that and say, hey, this actually makes you a professional.
Yeah, well, that's the line I take with them. I say, you this is your first paid acting job. You've been paid to go and do an audition, so you're now a professional, and they love it, and it's great.
And obviously you get a lot more callbacks than jobs. That's the nature of it, but there are jobs that come through. So what I would love to ask you is, for anyone thinking about representing their students or having an in-house talent management service or agency in their studio, what would you say to them about that? And how did Talent Manager Bootcamp help you achieve that goal and make that impact in your studio?
I would say run away. Don't do it. No, kidding. I would say do it. Absolutely do it. Talent Manager Bootcamp it gave me all the tools I needed to really be able to understand how that part of the industry works. And you were incredible with that, because I think your passion for it was actually, it actually ignited that in me. And it was a time where I was kind of probably flagging a little bit to find some other interest in the studio. And I find it really exciting because I really, as you were saying, it's boutique, and I only have a certain amount of talent on the roster, but I take it really seriously. I really care about them. And I think that's how you sold it. Well, you didn't sell it to us because we had already signed up for Talent Manager Bootcamp, but you were talking about that the manager side of thing is really about nurturing the talent and caring about the talent. And, you know, as studio owners, we do this. That's what we do. As teachers, we do that. We care about our students. So why not take it that step further? And, you know, there's something really exciting too about seeing a TV commercial and you go, oh, that's right, so-and-so had a callback for that. That could have been them up there. So even when it's, you know, not successful, it's still successful because you've created a buzz and a vibe in your studio. You've got excitement amongst the students. You know, the buzz goes through them. So-and-so is not at class today. Well, oh, they're down in Sydney doing a callback, you know. And I just think it makes, for me, and with our line that we use for Upstage is all the world's a stage, because we are really passionate about making theatre accessible. But this and what you've created with Talent Manager Bootcamp and the Studio Talent Collective makes this part of the industry accessible to people like me and my students and my clients in areas that are further away. And I think that's really exciting.
What about the process of actually going through the course? How did you find the program? Because I've tried to make it as accessible, as easy as possible, obviously very informative, very tangible information, but at the same time respecting the time of you know, the busy studio owner. How did you find going through that 8-week course?
I found it really easy. It was concise without sort of stripping away too much of the nuances. There was a lot of times that we delved into things a little bit more deeply because people had questions that they wanted to ask you. And I think, you know, you could dip in and out however you need to. I didn't find it time consuming or arduous at all. The whole thing was easy and informative. There wasn't anything that I thought this is stuff I don't need to know. And yeah, it went really quickly, actually, considering, you know, some of that online training you have to do for different things. It was great.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So what is next for Anne Coates? What have you got on the horizon?
Well, I am pretty keen to start our own professional performance company. Yep. As sort of an offshoot of Upstage, with some of my older students who, when I say older, they're over 18 now, and start doing some theatre and education stuff. So sort of using the skills that I've had as a teacher within schools and understanding how that system works to create some programs to go around to schools with different theatre pieces, but also with the programs for teachers to work them into their programs. I'm also starting some ensembles at a local school, a grammar school, in the afternoons. I've been asked to go and do that in independent school, which is great. So yeah, it's really nice, I guess. The idea of Upstage sort of having some little satellites at different schools is really exciting as well.
You know, having a professional performance company is such a wonderful arm of the business. And I think that actually it complements an agency. And the reason is because a lot of studios jump first to professional performance company, but there's a lot of development time with that. There's not necessarily a guarantee of work, or, you know, if you want to have that talent be committed to you, because here's the thing, you might provide them with show opportunities once every couple of months, right? Let's just say to start. It may not be a weekly gig. Would that be correct if I said that? It's
Yes.
not, yeah, right. So how can they remain loyal to you? Because when you develop a show, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. So for them to remain loyal to you, having an in-house talent agency or an agency set up is actually quite powerful, because they're not just getting those gigs and that development in the live show space. They're also getting opportunities for lucrative television commercials, opportunity for film, television, musical, theatre, stage, professional shows. So it's actually a whole overview of their career, and it means that you're more likely to hold your talent in those developed productions.
Yep.
They can be hard, you know, especially on a smaller budget, which I imagine it will be. It's not like you're performing at the Capitol Theatre here. You know, you're on smaller budgets, you cast a team of 5, for example, for a live show, and you might be lucky to have a swing, you know, like, you know, if you're lucky, you've got a swing. And most lower budget production companies don't have swings. So being able to say, you know, instead of them running off and going, well, I've just, you know, I've gone and gotten an agent, see you later. It's like, well, I'm a one-stop shop. You don't need to do that. I'm going to be here for you, and I'm going to, you know, have the best, I'm going to advocate for your career in every which way I can.
Yeah.
So I actually think that's quite powerful. And I think more studio owners should do it that way in some respects, because it can be tough holding talent and training talent up for shows. I'm not trying to sway you against it, because I know you're very versed in the production space. But yeah, I started with an agency. I started with the studio, had an agency, and then started my professional performance company. And I found that to be very helpful in in that order of things. And in fact, I've actually produced shows in schools. So that is such a great concept. And I would also say, if you can look at vacation care centres as well, and because that can be quite lucrative as well. And, you know, when you're in school term, you sell the show to the schools during school term, and when you're on holidays, you sell it to the vacation care holiday market.
Yeah.
So it's quite an opportunity there. I love that you're doing that. How do you feel about this next phase?
I feel excited about it. I feel a little bit overwhelmed, but I always feel a little bit like that until I sort of get my head around everything. I find that's just my creative process. I have all of these ideas, and I panic. I have sort of low level panic for a little while, and then it settles. I just sit in it, and then I go into action. And I guess it's just my process. I sort of have to distill the ideas until I get to the point where I know exactly which ones are going to be the most beneficial.
Yeah. And I think as well, being overwhelmed is super normal. And so we all feel that. I think it's part of the creative brain. You know how many ideas, I told you I just got back from Japan, and having space to think, my brain went on overload. I came back going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do all the things, right? And then you're like, oh, wait a minute, let's just map that out a little bit here. Let's timeline it. But, you know, that's part of the process. And I think having programs, mentorship, support, like, you know, hopefully I've helped you in that space, and you mentioned that it was helpful, has eased it a little bit. But yeah, how exciting. Congratulations. Who or what inspires you most?
Probably my students, actually. My students. I've got one student she's probably about 12, I'd say, or 13. And unfortunately, our current studio that we're using at the moment isn't overly accessible. There's these really rickety stairs that they have to climb. I call them the crack stairs. I feel like there's like maybe a crack house underneath them or something. It's quite a dodgy. I mean, it's great, but it just looks dodgy at certain times. And she has not got very good mobility. I can't remember the name of the disease off the top of my head. It's a degenerative disease, but she has a brother an older brother who carries her up the stairs for every class, and she just comes through that door and she's just, her face is beaming, and I'm going to get emotional. And I just think, honestly, if you said who do we inspire, that's who I do it for. But for those students who otherwise, they thank me at the end of every lesson. I don't know whether it's just something in the water up here or what it is, but everyone's grateful for what I'm doing. And I think, how many people can go to work and feel that? I mean, it's not always like that, but generally, I feel like people are grateful for what I'm providing, and that's pretty special.
That is so special. And I think as well, we talk about accessibility, being at the forefront and having people that, want to be there regardless of their circumstance is so special. I need to get one of those, but I don't know, being that the stairs are rickety, I don't know how safe it would be, but one of those lifts that go up the side.
I know. I have thought of that. I am on the lookout for a new studio, actually. I just think, I mean, it's a really amazing space. It's just unfortunate that it's on the first floor and there's no lifts or anything like that. So, and the stairs are external. So, for some of my kids who are on the spectrum, even that messes with them, having to come up these stairs that aren't enclosed. But I mean, that's probably great for them to be doing that as well. So
yeah, for sure, absolutely. I actually just had a thought as well, because you talked about the professional performance company, the agency, all of these extra things that have sort of ignited from the process of being a studio owner who's gone on to learn about how to do this. Do you think that it's opened up a world of your future self? And what I mean by that is, sometimes as studio owners, we think, some of us say, hey, I'm going to be studio owner forever, and others don't. Like, I've got clients that have actually loved the course so much, or the process of learning something new within their industry. They're like, this actually gives me comfort that I have other career opportunities for the future, that I'm not just bound to being a studio owner, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I could go into casting, like you said, or I could go into just running my agency full time if I ever wanted to sell, or my studio or whatever. Has that ever dawned on you, that it opens up other ideas for future aspects?
Absolutely. I don't want to be teaching drama when I'm, I've always said, if I can't sit down on the floor with the kids and get up graciously, then I'm not doing it anymore. And I'm already, when I get up, I go, oh, and someone has to help me. I put my hand out, one of the kids pulls me up. Yeah. So I'm 52 now, and I've got to take all of this really seriously, because I mean, this is probably something for another podcast. I don't know if you've ever done one about sort of superannuation and how you look after yourself financially as a studio owner, but I haven't up until recently. So that's something I've got to really take seriously and think about, moving forward. How am I going to make this work the best for me, so that I can do all the things that I want to do? And there's lots of things that I want to do that aren't teaching or owning a studio. So, but I think the studio talent manager boot camp, your mentorship, other mentors that you've put across my path, they're all ways that have inspired me, and I suppose really shown me that there's lots of different ways of doing things, and I'm not stuck at this forever.
No. And you actually said a comment before, I wanted to interject, but I didn't. I just let it go. But you said, oh,
probably couldn't get a word in.
I could be a casting director or whatever. And I'm thinking,
yeah,
you can still do it,
Yeah.
You can, you still got hopefully at least another 30 years on this planet, and another the way the world's going, another 20 years of employment.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So, today's the day, but I suppose I just wanted to flag that, because I was like, this life.
I could be that crotchety, mad old casting lady.
They all are. Don't worry about it, And I would love to know, how do you define success? What does success mean to you?
Success is going to bed at night and feeling like I've and I don't want this to sound twee, like, I've made a difference with the world, or but I really love going to bed and feeling good about the energy and what I've put into the world that day. It's pretty much it for me, to be honest, whether that's just with my own family or with my own self-care or with the studio or the community that I've created with the studio. Yeah, I think just being able to close my eyes and think, I did something good today. Yeah.
I love that. And if people want to find you, where can they find you online? Or how do they find you, Anne?
They can find me. So our Instagram and Facebook handle is at Upstage Shows, and our website is upstageyouththeatre.com.au.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And everyone listening, if you want to jump into Talent Manager Bootcamp or just check it out, doors are open. Head to the link in the show notes, josephinelancuba.com/TMB. And again, that link is there in the show notes to check out. Thank you so much, Anne, for being on the show today.
Thanks, Jo. See you later.
This episode was brought to you by my signature group coaching program, Studio Biz Success, an amazing and accessible online educational platform for performing arts studio owners designed to help you grow your business with confidence and get your results. Check it out at josephinelancuba.com, along with other great industry resources to help you leap into the studio biz you deserve. If you love this episode, be sure to share it with your friends. You can tag me on social media at Josephine Lancuba and give it a review. Your support helps the show to grow so I can continue to provide you with useful, informative content. I'm Josephine Lancuba, your biggest cheerleader. Thanks for listening and shine bright.